Hello and welcome to the next interview in the Oral History series at NYU Postdoc. I am Maria Lechich, and today I am being joined by Jane Tucker, who can be thought of as a kind of community historian, given that her connection to our program spans 50 years. Wow. I'm very grateful to have her join us today to reflect on the history and the evolution of our program. So let us begin. So Jane, tell us a little bit about your early life and how you got into the field of psychology and psychoanalysis.
Sure, but first I'd like to thank you for that very warm and welcoming introduction. I'm really very glad to be doing this because the program has meant a great deal to me, and I think its importance needs to be emphasized so that people know more about its history. I will glad to tell you a bit about mine. My early years were spent in Brooklyn, as I have learned many postdoc people also have had their origins there. And I lived on 19th Street and Avenue L, and I went to grammar school nearby. And then when I was time to go to high school, we moved to Manhattan. And we lived on West End Avenue and 94th Street. And I had, it was an interesting change. It was a difficult change for me. It was a different environment. But I did like my school, which was Hunter, and I made friends there. And that I have to this day, really. And how I got into the field is rather circuitous. I was actually a history major in college, and the first time I heard about psychoanalysis was from a psychiatrist who was the husband of of a teacher in the department who came to talk to us about what his work was like. And it was certainly intriguing and something that I thought I might be interested in learning more about. But when I graduated, I had gotten a fellowship to continue in history at Columbia. It would have required that I devote myself to teaching afterward. And I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And also, I really felt it was time I started earning a living. I therefore had to find something I could do. And between my junior and senior years, in college, an economics professor had gotten me a job working for the Economic and Social Division at the United Nations, working on a book on world trade. And I worked on that all summer. And on the basis of that, I had so-called publication experience. And I therefore was able to be hired to be in the editorial staff of Time magazine. So that was my next stop.
Are you in your 20s at this point?
Right, early 20s.
Yeah.
But this was quite something. I won't say that much about what it was like to be in that field at that time, but I was one of the last people to actually take people off the ticker tape things that came over with the news, the AP wire, the Reuters wire, whatever. And the first thing I had to do when I got there in the morning was unravel all of this stuff, which was in an unair-conditioned little cubicle, tear it off. There were multiple carbon layers. It was at a time in this world when one went to work with white gloves and linen dresses, and I was within 20 minutes a sight to behold. Anyway, but it was an interesting job, actually. I worked on things that are known as back of the book, which were actually often obituaries, which were really very interesting to research. They did not allow women to be writers, by the way. And just, I had decided to leave because one of the things that happened there was the magazine would close on Sunday nights. So most of the work in a flurry was done over the weekends. I'd be there very late all weekend, and it was very hard to have a social life. So it was not exactly the place to be at that age. But really, the people there were very interesting and very good to work with, and it was also, I can add there, Tom actually paid for me to take a course at Columbia. Since I still had that registration, I had to climb the fellowship. One of the benefits of that job, however, and indeed, in fact, in addition to working with people who were really very interesting and very talented, was that Time paid for me to take a course, a graduate course. And since I had that registration still open for me at Columbia, I did take a course in contemporary American thinking, and I wrote for my term paper one on the influence of Freud on American culture. So my interest was deepening. All right. I did leave that job because it really was very hard to have, as I said, a social life while I was there. And I then got a job at the publisher Harcourt Brace in the college department. They actually hired me as a copy editor, but the woman who was the head of that department was very overworked, very irascible, and just handed me things. And I didn't really know what a copy editor did, so I just started editing. And I worked on manuscripts in that way, and one of the editors there was kind enough to notice that I was doing the kind of work I was, and arranged for me to get a promotion much earlier than it would have come. So I was made an editor. And I worked on books in history, literature, and the social sciences, including psychology.
Did you like the job?
Well, it was certainly interesting. I mean, one, you were responsible for, making suggestions about books to get organized, really working on the organization of books, and having substantial comments to make about things. So it really was interesting. And you were expected, if you were working on a particular topic, to become familiar with it. So it was certainly, it continued my education, if you will.
It sounds like a demanding job.
And it was, yes,
Yeah.
yes, my jobs were always very demanding. It turned out.
Yeah.
When I had that job at the UN, when I left, there had been 3 of us hired to work on this book on world trade. When I left, they told me I had done half of it. So I had tended to get involved with what I was doing. Anyway, the job at Harcourt was certainly a very fun one to have, but it was becoming less satisfying than I had wished, and my interest in psychoanalysis was increasing. I was reading about it. I had friends in the field, and I started my own treatment, and I decided that I really wanted to make that change. Well, I didn't have any of the prerequisites, and I had to take those courses at night, which I did while I was working, and then finally I left and when I did, I at Harcourt they were interested in helping me get freelance work, and that got me a position with a woman named Gay Luce, who was a science writer who was working on a book on sleep. And I therefore became very conversant with what was going on in that research area. I also met a number of the people who were working in the field. She was a science writer who had an affiliation with the National Institutes of Health, which at that time had money to support research. And the research would be needed to be then explained to the public. And so articles needed to be written, and I was hired frequently to work on those articles. I eventually, I was, quite conversant in the areas of sleep and biological rhythms for a while. But I tried working in a sleep lab at night and found that it would really not be possible to have a life and work all night. And I kind of removed myself from that particular area of research. What a lot of people may not realize, especially a postdoc, that the early work on rapid eye movement sleep was done in an apartment at 175 Riverside Drive, which is where our dear colleague Barbara Waxenberg
Yes,
lived.
that's the building.
In exactly the apartment line she lived in. What was in her apartment, the master bedroom, was a sleep lab in William Dement's apartment, which later was taken over by a psychologist named, many of you know, named John Antrobus. At any rate, let's see where I am. I've made some
Jane,
notes.
just to clarify, so during this period, are you working toward meeting the requirements to be eligible
Yes.
for training?
Yes, finally I was, reasonably qualified to apply, and I began the PhD program at City College and completed at Teachers College, earning my PhD from Columbia in 1975. My work I was especially interested in fantasy and its role in cognitive functioning in general, and that was the area of my dissertation.
And
So-
what department were you in?
I was in both clinical and developmental, because I used children for my subjects. One of the things I would especially like to mention about the years I was in training, because it's so relevant, a concern for people in training now, and that is the amount of community work that most of us did as we were coming along. I worked at Bronx State Hospital. I worked at a community youth program in the Bronx, which worked with adolescents who had difficulties, some of them not only with their families, but with the law. I worked in a college counseling setting. I worked in a clinic that served the neighborhood, and everyone else I knew who was coming along really had a lot of community focus. And it continues because most of us, when we moved out of those jobs, began volunteering to offer clinical consultation to students in the graduate programs whose patients were usually from varied socioeconomic and cultural backgrounds. And most of us continued that as we came along and have always had some measure of, made some measure of contribution to that, and are hardly divorced from knowing how significant such situations are for a person's life and being.
Tell us how you chose postdoc. How did you get to this in your life?
Well, as I mentioned, I first heard about psychoanalysis when I was a Barnard student in a history class, and my interest increased as I began to know people in the field, and I did some reading, and I was advised, that I would have to get a degree before I could enter psychoanalytic training, which I then did. I actually went to graduate school solely to be able to get psychoanalytic training. And when it came time to do that, the places I was considering were the New York Psychoanalytic Institute, the White Institute, and NYU. Before I entered the field, I was friendly with some psychiatrists who were very much part of the American Psychoanalytic Association, who were saying, oh, that was the place to go. But the more I heard about that, and the more I heard about postdoc, the more I felt that postdoc was going to be the place for me. Because of the remarkable attitude that was prevalent, made possible by our founder, Bernie Kalinkowitz, which allowed for a really gratifying educational experience, where there were interesting courses that you had the option of taking. You had choice about that. You had choice about whom to work with for supervision of your clinical work. And the atmosphere in general was a welcoming one. Also, there was this issue of the training analyst, which was extremely important, and where Bernie was really the first person to significantly maintain that such a training experience had to be one that was personal and for the advantage of the candidate, and could not be assigned by the training program. So that made me very interested. All of those things made me very interested in the program.
What is the year that you entered the program?
I entered the program in 1977.
And what was it like in those early years?
Well, there was some ferocious theoretical confrontation that was ongoing between the people who were interested in an interpersonal orientation and those who had a more Freudian orientation. And it was quite something in its intensity in many ways. In fact, that's how the track system came into being. The track system was had already been instituted by the time I got there, but it was a relatively recent institution of a change in the program, because it was to keep these two groups separate in their own domains, and it did help, but not completely.
In reducing the tension?
In reducing the tension. That was one of the most significant reasons for it at the outset. I mean, in these days, It also has other functions in that it's very hard to administer the program that's as large as large as it is now, with having it more segmented. But in spite of that contentiousness, when I entered, it was really a very friendly place. I had many nice experiences with colleagues, and in fact, I'm in a reading group that I've been in ever since my days there. I remained in, and these connections endured, and it was cross-track. Friendships were formed among people according to how they got along, rather than theoretical matters.
So tell us, what changes have you seen since the beginning, since arriving at Postdoc over the years?
Well, actually, one of the things that's very important about the program that I'd like to go into is the impact that the postdoctoral program has had on the field of psychoanalysis. Really beginning with Bernie's effort to have it be a more democratic training process, and also to change the practice itself. Okay, I'm going to mention here that many people aren't aware of how psychologists did not, at the outset, let's say at the beginning of the 60s, have the right to do psychotherapy. And he became the architect of our way of training psychologists as psychoanalysts. That has really established us as a profession. This was accomplished by legislation, having the scope of practice of psychologists made to include psychotherapy and psychoanalysis. That's part of the reason the program came into being, in a way, was to assert that we were trained in that way. And the other matter, which is impacting the field more and more, is that the issue of the training analyst. And that has certainly been taken up in a very significant way. But other things that people aren't aware of, I think, is the way postdoc faculty had an influence in liberalizing the field. By liberalizing, I mean moving away, expanding what the person of the analyst was going to need to be, and it has the changes in thinking that have come up in the field in terms of relational work and other issues in practice. Our faculty was very instrumental in promoting, and a lot of people aren't aware of that. So I want to point that out about what we have contributed. Another thing I wouldn't want to leave out about Bernie is that he was very instrumental in establishing Division 39. One of the first people, which gave us a position with the American Psychological Association. This was a major change for them. I think I mentioned that at Division 39, there is even a movement that disparages institute training and a campaign against it. And many of our senior colleagues have been distancing themselves from the organization which they once relied upon to support substantive psychoanalytic education. I myself was once actively involved in Division 39, having, among other activities, worked closely with Joseph Reprin when he was editor of Psychoanalytic Psychology. I was on the editorial board and served as the journal's representative to the International Council of Editors of Psychoanalytic Journals, and with whom I, along with Martin Schulman, co-edited Way Beyond Freud, Postmodern Psychoanalysis Observed.
What roles have you had at Postdoc over the years?
Well, here I would especially like to rely on some notes, since I really would like to include various aspects of my involved with my time here. From the outset, I was really involved both with the actions in the track with which I was affiliated, which is now called the Contemporary Freudian track, and the program as a whole. I really was consistently involved from the time I came into the program, and I also, I'm very pleased to have become a member of the teaching faculty. I taught the course on Freud, and have been a clinical consultant for many years, and I am most pleased about having accomplished that. I've also served on every major committee that this program has. And
tell us what they are. I know you're on the executive committee.
Well, I've really done a lot of work preparing such documents as program histories, handbooks. I was personally involved in the development of the Accreditation Council for Psychoanalytic Education, and with the American Psychoanalytic Association. For years, prepared the paperwork required for ACPE, and especially rewarding was my 20-year tenure as chair of the admissions committee, which enabled me to learn so much about the wonderful qualities that our candidates bring us. One of the things I haven't emphasized enough really was, I mentioned now the Accreditation Council for Psychoanalytic Education and the American Psychoanalytic Association, is that we were instrumental in making changes, or in the formative aspects of ACPE, and in making changes in the American. The ACPE was just forming when I was there, and Lou had put me on the committee when they were establishing their rules about what would constitute a significant institute, proper training at an institute. They were trying to have regulate what would be substantive institute training for the country. And so I and other postdoc people who joined me and followed me were involved in setting up the rules for that, which, needless to say, included our interest in having a personal rather than a training analyst system be acceptable everywhere. Similarly, with the American Psychoanalytic Association, they began seeking our participation having been rather hostile to our people many years ago. I will not go into that here. But again, they have accepted that a personal analysis might be preferable to the training analyst system that has existed throughout their organizations for these many years. That is a major impact on the field in general, and we can trace that back to Bernie.
That's wonderful.
And it's quite wonderful. I will say here also again about Bernie that it most significant for me was the opportunity to work. Most significant, especially when I came in, was the opportunity to work directly with Bernie. I was invited on to his advisory committee beginning in my student days, and have been on the
As a
program.
candidate, you were on that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have been on the program's executive committees through the tenure of Lou Aaron and now Spiros Orphanos, and I'm there still. So.
I have a question about your tenure as the director of admissions. Over the 20 years that you've done that, how would you say the applicants have changed? You know, what have you observed?
I'm very glad you brought that up, because it was very wonderful to see a change in who was applying. We always had, we were always interested in having a broader range of applicants in terms of people's ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds. But one of the things that occurred was, remember, we're at the top of the ladder. So our population has to be people who have already gone through programs, have doctorates. And many people who would have fallen into those categories, who met those qualifications, were not so interested in coming into our field. We're choosing things like law, medicine, or social work, which made them, in a sense, I think they felt more active in with social concerns. And we had worked very hard to try to make it clear that we wanted it to be a hospitable place for many people. And over the years, if you look at the table of who gathers around, you can see that change, because there are no longer all white faces at that table. And we hope, of course, to continue to be able to have that occur.
Were there psychiatrists applying in the early days, or is that a relatively new thing?
That's very interesting. The psychiatrists have been applying in what I would call the more recent days. In our early days, very early on, I want to mention, Bernie got some psychiatrists to be part of the program and supervise our candidates and teach. Those psychiatrists would be ostracized by their professional organizations for training psychologists very often. That was the attitude. Well, our program, as it has moved along, began attracting psychiatrists. We actually were not recruiting them, but people heard about our program, and what they especially liked were the things I have described. That here are people who are professionals, who have really achieved very high levels of training and are concerned about what they do, and they like the atmosphere here. They, as opposed to how they have felt treated in other places. So that interest has continued, and we seem to be
Yeah.
getting about 10%, would
Yeah.
you say,
Yes.
of our
Every year it
classes
grows.
um, on a regular basis. And we're very pleased to have them, and they seem to have participated very willingly in our activities. So that is a recent, we can call it a recent development, but it certainly is part of who we are at this point.
Jane, what would you say you're most proud of in terms of your contribution? You've really had such an active role at Postdoc ever since you arrived as a candidate. What do you feel best about or very good about?
Well, actually, all of what I've described.
Yeah.
It's being in this environment. It's being with the kind of people Postdoc attracts. It really is very important to me to have been a part of this and to be doing this with the people I've been doing it with. It's really been particularly important for those of us who are primarily clinicians to have such a relationship with colleagues. I know that my work and what I enjoy most is my clinical experience, but it is essential to have this surround, and I have really felt I have gotten so much from this program.
Yeah, I think, as a clinician, one can feel like it's a solitary experience. So creating relationships with colleagues, being part of a community could be very helpful in the arc of one's career. Is that what you're...
That's very much what I have in mind. I think we all resonate with what you said, Maria.
Jane, is there anything else you may want to mention that you haven't had a chance to say yet?
Well, I want to say how lucky I have felt to have, as I think I said, to be with such fine people. Our directors have been very dear to me, especially, and I'm sorry, to see Spiros moving on, and you moving on. I know what you have contributed, which I consider enormous, and change has to come, and we'll be involved with it.
Yeah.
But I will miss you very much, and I think we're all very grateful for what you've provided.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you for being such a great role model and an important person in my professional development.
Most of all, I would like to conclude by saying that I could not be more pleased with having chosen Postdoc and what it has so fully provided: an excellent psychoanalytic education, dear friends and colleagues, and the chance to contribute as a member of the faculty. Most of all, I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to work in this field.